Oshkosh Media is government programming on GovTV, community programming on Life TV, and community radio on Oshkosh FM 101.9.
Hi, I'm Sue PANEK, and I'm your moderator for this evening, and welcome to Oshkosh Outlook 2020. This is, we think, it's either the 8th or the 9th year. I've not been involved in all of them, so I don't quite know, but it's either the 8th or 9th year that the Citizens for a Strong Oshkosh have put this event together, and we've had really good turnout in the past, and again, even though the weather was kind of icy this morning, thank you all for coming out today. It's very, very important that we have this meeting every year because it gives us an opportunity to learn more about what's happening in Oshkosh and how what's happening with our larger organizations, our city, our county, our school district, and both of our higher education institutions, what's going on and how that's going to affect us as citizens. So again, thank you for coming. Our speakers tonight will have about 8 minutes, and I shouldn't say about, they will have 8 minutes, okay? I'm telling you, you will have 8 minutes.
I thought you said 20.
Although I looked at some of the slides, and some of the slides look like 20 minutes of information. Kathy Propp is our timekeeper, and she will be tracking your 8 minutes, and she will be holding up signs for you, a 60-second sign, and from way back here, that's a stop sign, but you really can't see it very well. Oh, she's sitting up front, okay. So you'll have an opportunity to know when you have 60 seconds, and then when you do need to have a hard stop. Our speakers will really be talking about the issues, priorities, and initiatives that they have coming for this upcoming year. And then once they're done with their piece, we'll all have an opportunity to ask questions. And it's important for you that these questions need to be written down on cards. And Kathy will be one of those people walking through the room with the cards, and you'll write your question on, hand it back to Kathy, and then they'll be presented to me. I'll ask the question, and then each of those people that want to respond to that question will have an opportunity to do that. Just quickly, I want to introduce the people who are here from Citizens for a Strong Oshkosh. In the back of the room, we have Kathy Propp, and we have music. And then we have Kobe Skellinger, and Paulette Feld, who is managing our PowerPoint presentation. So our speakers today, and I'll tell you who they are, but I'm not going to introduce each of them with a biography or anything. We don't have that kind of time tonight. If you want to learn more about them, go on their respective websites, and there's all kinds of information about them. Here we have Chancellor Andrew Levitt from UW Oshkosh. We have Mark Harris from the City of Oshkosh. He's city manager. Mark Harris from County Executive for Winnebago County. Mark ROHLOFF, City Manager from the City of Oshkosh. Vicki Cartwright, who is Dr. Vicki Cartwright, Superintendent of the Oshkosh Area School District, and is it Dr. Debbie Heath? No. Not yet, okay. Debbie Heath, who is the Associate Vice President at Fox Valley Technical College. And the first person who will be coming up for their 8 minutes will be City Manager Mark ROHLOFF.
Thank you, Sue. I have a lot more than 8 minutes on the board, so if you see anything I don't talk about, put it into your questions for later on. Just a real brief summary. Our 2020 budget was adopted by council back in November. There's a little over a 2.5% expenditure increase, and the levy is about 3.39%. The levy's greater than the expenditures because state aid continues to be restricted. We haven't had an increase in state aid in over 20 years. In fact, there's been decreases. So that's why you see the difference between the revenues and the expenditures there. The council did put in some increased staffing for public safety. That's as a result of a staffing study that was done for both police and fire. So we're pleased to see that to help improve our public safety services. Strategic planning, you'll notice that it says for 21-22, that is not a misprint. The council would like us to incorporate our strategic plan goals into our budgeting process. And so they've asked us to get the strategic plan process started in the first quarter of the year because we start our capital improvement program in the second quarter and our budget process late second quarter, early third quarter. So you're going to see us doing a lot of discussions. In fact, I just came back from a retreat today with our staff, and then we're going to be holding a retreat with council at the end of this month to keep that process going. One of the items in our strategic plan is debt management. We have a lot of capital needs, as you well know, but debt management, we have to balance the needs that we have with our ability to pay. And we're developing a plan to actually lower our debt burden, but try to figure out a way to how do we take advantage as the market and as the economy improves, can we take advantage to get some of these capital needs done. There are a lot of growing needs, and I know Dr. Cartwright's going to talk about school facility needs. A much overlooked aspect of our capital improvement plan has been public buildings. The only major public building that we've done any work on is the Public Works garage across the street that you see. I know we faced a lot of criticism for that, but I can tell you that the efficiencies that we have as a result of that building certainly justify the improvements. And I think we need to take a look at that for some other facilities in terms of energy efficiency and efficiency of staff. Those are genuine needs that I think the public will get a benefit with some of those. Public safety, our parks building also across the street, our public museum, just to make it more relevant. There's not even a first floor bathroom in our public museum for our guests, our visitors to the museum. Lakeshore Park Master Plan was approved back just last month, and some of the initial projects, they're to be determined. We haven't figured out which ones we're going to prioritize. I suspect if you want a little insight into where I think they're going to go, they're probably going to be the ones closer to Rainbow Memorial Park because there's infrastructure there that we can take advantage and we can get better bang for the buck with the funds that we have. I know some people would like to see some of those done sooner, but we certainly have the proceeds from the sale of a portion of Lakeshore that we're going to use, and that's really the first priority with those. Interest continues for the Oshkosh Avenue corridor. In fact, the council will be considering the construction of a hotel, a Marriott Town Suites hotel that's planning to break ground in April, I believe. And then there's some other rezonings that are also being planned over there. So I think now that Oshkosh Corporation has opened its global headquarters, we're starting to see greater interest. Bank First is going to be doing their grand opening at the end of this week. Tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So you're going to see more of that interest generate now that Oshkosh Corporation has opened its doors. 2020 capital improvement programs. The two major projects that we're going to see in 2020 is Part 3 of Oregon Street. That'll be from 21st Avenue down to 28th Avenue. That'll be the final portion where we're really going to do a lot of road construction. The remainder of that, as we go further south, will be just the sewer improvements. We actually get into county jurisdiction at that point, so we're not going to do as much roads, but we are cooperating a great deal with Winnebago County to get that done. Snell Road between Jackson and Mosier, if you've driven over to County Park, you know what rough shape that's in. We're hoping to take advantage of a grant that the state's making available for streets, but we're going to be getting that project done regardless. It's much needed, well overdue, and it was part of when we did some of the improvements in that area to accommodate the expansion of Bemis Healthcare Packaging, which is now Amcor. We indicated that we would be doing that project in the near future. That was 5 years ago, so it's time for us to make good on the promise we made there. Sawdust District Plan is near completion. We've been working with stakeholders in the area, and you're going to see within the next month or two an unveiling of what the draft plan looks like. Sawdust District is south side of Bridge, south side of the Fox River, Main Street, and just hugging a little bit of Main Street and going over to the east, including Pioneer Island. So Pioneer Island, what can I say? Because I get that question every year. Pioneer Island's back in local hands. Art Dumke, a local developer, now owns it. And there's been a new tax increment financing district approved. You may have heard some things about glamping and things like that, that was kind of best way I can describe it was probably a placeholder. But I think he's got some more solid concrete plans, and so I think you're going to see something. There's no specifics, but I think the glamping is probably not even going to end up happening because I think he's ready to move forward with something else. So stay tuned for that. How real is that? The best indicator I have is that I had said something recently about 4th of July fireworks, and there were some people angry that they want the fireworks returned to Menominee Park. We were only going away for a year. Well, it'll eventually get back to Menominee Park because if Pioneer Island gets developed, that's where we did the fireworks last year. Art doesn't want to commit to doing the fireworks this year. That tells me maybe some good news is coming about Pioneer. That's the best I can tell you. But so we're still looking for a place for fireworks, but we're certainly going to work on working with Mr. Dumpke to get something, because that will really be the anchor of the Sawdust District. So I'd encourage you to look for plans for the Sawdust District in the coming months and give us your input on what you would like to see there. Comment on the things that we've done so far. So I got it all covered in that time. Kathy just put up the stop sign, so I'm going to just quit while I'm ahead and certainly welcome any questions to fill in the blanks here. Thank you.
Let's have a round of applause for Mark. And now please welcome Debbie Heath from Fox Valley Technical College.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Debbie Heath from Fox Valley Tech. I'm in a new role here at Fox Valley Tech. A lot of familiar faces out there. I've been with the college for almost 29 years. Just a little bit of background, the first 14 years, I was an aviation maintenance instructor down at the Spanbauer Center, and I taught aircraft mechanics. Then I went into a dean and associate dean role for another 14 years, the other way around, associate dean, then dean. And about 10 months ago, they created this new position. So I'm the new Melissa Cohn with the different job duties, responsible for all of the regional centers. So that gives you a little bit of my background, but I'm not new to Fox Valley Tech. New to this role, though, and my role is really to manage this facility and all of the regional centers. And what I wanted to share with you today is some big picture Fox Valley Tech. Overall, the college, as far as student enrollments, we served in 18-19, we served over 43,000 students at Fox Valley Tech with approximately 3,900 Oshkosh enrollments, and that's at 4 different locations. We've got the Oshkosh Riverside, we've got the S.J. Spanbauer Aviation and Construction Center, we have a Fab Tech Center, and we have the Advanced Manufacturing Technology Center over by the highway. So we've served quite a few students in this region, in this area. College-wide, we've got approximately 4,100 graduates in the 18-19 year. And we're really proud of the graduate employment number at 94% over all the programs at the college. In addition to the program work that we do a lot of business and industry contracting work. We do over $12 million worth of contracting work to support our local industries, and we serve over 2,000 employers and 20,000 individuals in those employees for those organizations to support with updated skills and whatever is needed in the industries. In addition to that, we do a lot of partnership with the school districts, and we've got over 6,000 dual credit agreements with different high school districts where we offer our courses in the high school. We do some training with their teachers. The high school teachers offer our curriculum, and there's over 6,000 students a year, 6,100 as a matter of fact, that obtain college credit and high school credit at the same time. Some of those students complete high school already earning half of or an entire certificate or technical diploma program and then come to us for the completion of those associate degrees. So we're very proud of that. In addition to the current programs, some of the programs that have grown here in Oshkosh are based on demand. We are very proud of the fact that we're responsive to the industry needs and what the community needs as far as employment and what programs are needed. We've grown the aeronautic pilot program, for example. We've grown it over the last couple of years. We're serving 60 students in that program, and it's an amazing completion rates. We've got a lot of activity at the airport. We're the highest user of that airport here in Oshkosh, and we operate 8 aircraft every day of the week, 365. We're operating aircraft out of there so those students can get the experience they need. We've also expanded construction management due to the demands in commercial construction. Bolts and Myrons that hire our graduates in construction management. We've expanded that program and added staffing for the program. So those are just some of the booming programs here in Oshkosh. Annual objectives. The college annual objectives, specifically this year, one in workforce and community development. I was charged with putting together a comprehensive programming plan for the regional centers. In particular, address the workforce shortage throughout the district by developing this comprehensive regional programming plan with particular attention to Oshkosh Riverside campus to identify some anchor programs that we need in this facility that you're sitting in. And we've had very successful programs in this facility. When I'm talking about anchor programs, what I'm looking at are programs that are entirely offered in this facility. And that was our model of the S.J. Spanbauer Aviation and Construction Center. That's the only place that we offer those programs. And it's been very successful and sustainable at that facility. We built that when I started 29 years ago, and it's been very successful and sustainable. We don't grow beyond what we can sustain in the workforce. So some of the programs that we're looking at this facility, what kind of programs we're looking at, what jobs there are. We're listening to our advisory committees. We're identifying opportunities for new programs in this facility, something to really hang our hat and renew what we're doing at the Oshkosh Riverside campus. As part of that, we're conducting a facilities space study and utilization of all of the rooms in this facility and how we may be able to update them and adjust to what programs we want to bring in here, which is something that we haven't done. And I think it'll be very popular to bring some new programs in here for the industries. The other college annual objective that we're looking at is student success. Part-time student pathways is something that we're focusing on this year to ensure that all of our programs that we're offering, the students can start at one point and earn a credential or a portion of a program or an entire program, and then they can build into another program. And that's counting the dual credit students. They may earn a technical diploma while they're doing high school and dual credit, and they may be able to come here then and complete the associate degree. And how we offer those, the flexibility, we're looking at all of that and trying to adjust to what the need is in the industry or in the district to identify flexible work schedules, what works for our students. Our students are different than they were 20 years ago, and what their needs are very different. We've gone through We've gone into some online. They need more flexibility to be able to do it online. We've gotten into some Collaborate, which is face-to-face with an instructor. So the way we're offering some of these courses, we're looking at a little differently. Another one of the annual objectives is the collaborative culture. Equity framework is really one of the things we're determining to improve the culture and competency and inclusion of diverse populations within the college. Some of the things that we've been doing, we're very fortunate our foundation plays a key role in supporting students with emerging funds, with scholarships, with a Promise program that I know Melissa talked about last year at this forum, which is for high school students that are low income and can't afford the tuition. It gives them didn't get the 60-second sign yet, so I'm good. Coming up. So some of those unmet needs, we're trying to identify what they are. Through our foundation, we raised $1.2 million last year in scholarships, and we served over 1,600 students. And that was only 50% of the students that applied. So if we've got more than that, how can we address that issue? It's time to stop. So the other thing I just wanted to say quick was different articulations we have with UW Oshkosh, aeronautic pilot. Our students can continue on and earn their bachelor's degree in another 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. And now Dr. Vicki Cartwright.
Good evening, everybody. You should have received when you came in a copy of our current strategic plan. And we're proud and happy to announce to you that last year, starting around this time, with partnership with the Oshkosh for Education, as well as online surveys, given that there were some spots of difficult weather last February, we went ahead and really obtained the input from our community. We really wanted to know what our community thought of the school district, what were some of our opportunities, what are some of the things that they thought that we were doing very well. And we took that feedback, and from that, we worked with our school board and created our strategic plan. So what you have in front of you is a one-page summary. So it gives you the high points related to that. Some of the key components related to this is our guiding principle, students first. So every decision, every action, everything that occurs within the district goes through that guiding principle first. And that's truly important to us. You'll also see that within our goals and some of those priority areas that there's some discussions along the way of equity. You know, and when you're looking at opportunity gaps and how do you look at really trying to address those needs. And so the district last year started its training and pathway around the work of equity. What is that, and how did we get to where we are now, and where are we going to go forward? So last year, all of the administrators were trained on that, and now this year, starting in August, we started having conversations with all of our staff members. And so we have ongoing conversations with a very structured program on how we're rolling this out. And stay tuned, because there's a lot more work to be done within this area, but we wanted to make sure that you were aware of that, and that is one of the cornerstones within the strategic plan itself. Moving on to the next topic is with our total enrollment, open enrollment, private school vouchers. For the school district right now, last year you heard me say that we were pretty much in stable enrollment. We are continuing to be stable, but it is declining, which is important to know. And so, because as we look at the number of facilities that we have and the size of those facilities, which oftentimes are extremely small, what ends up happening oftentimes is that we are not able to provide the services that are necessary to our students because we have a lot of people that are on the road, going from school to school because we can't put full-time people at those facilities. Because financially, we just cannot afford it. So that, please stay tuned, and I'll surface back onto that conversation, but we are in a slight decline on our enrollment right now for the Oshkosh Area School District. From last year to this year, we had we're experiencing approximately 210 less students or fewer students than what we had in the 18-19 school year. And in addition to that, talking about private school vouchers, because I know, again, we listen a lot. We do pay attention to what our community is saying to us. And we heard a lot of questions that were happening around our property taxes that came out here recently. And a lot of people saying, hey, our property taxes went way up. What's going on with the school? Well, I want to give you some information I think is really important for you to be aware of. We're still considered to be a low spending district, meaning that what we're taxing on is still less than what the state average is. So we tax for approximately $9,600 per student is what we actually receive when we're looking at that, whereas the state average is about $10,100. So we're still below what the state average is across all of Wisconsin. In addition to that, so the property taxes went up approximately 6.5% related to your school tax bill. I think this is you probably don't know though. Of that 6.5%, over 26% of it was due to private school vouchers. Let me put that in a little bit more layman's terms. So where our mill rate went up 3.5% or 29 cents, of that 29 cents, 14 cents alone was the increase from the previous year to this year on private school vouchers. And that's funding that does not come into the Oshkosh Area School District. In fact, if any of those students have special needs, the district has to pay for that, and they have to pay at a higher rate than what the district actually receives in order to serve those students. So that's kind of giving you an idea, and you're probably going, okay, well, give me dollar cents. What are we talking about? When the private school voucher program started in the 2015-16 school year, the Oshkosh Area School District paid out approximately $360,000. This past year, we paid out $2.46 million. And this is going to continue to increase. So I think that's important for you to be aware of because, again, these are funds that impact you, that the school district, all we are is a flow through. In other words, we do not see these money, and again, going back for a child with special needs, it actually costs us additional funds in order to provide funding for those students. Moving on, communications. With our one thing we want to point out is, again, we're listening to you. A lot of people saying very frustrated with the old website, can't seem to find information on it. We have a brand new website that's out there. Please, I encourage you to go and take a look at it because on that website is a whole page that says Facility Advisory Committee. And these are meetings that occurred from August through November. We were talking about our facilities. There's a lot of information on there. We encourage you to please take a look at that. We want our community to be informed. We want you to know what's going on. We want you to know that, hey, based off the community survey that you took back in October, of the people who participated, a majority of you said, we want you to consolidate schools. And we want, but for that phase one approach where we were taking a look at a two-prong on that, there's actually two portions related to that. The first one related to infrastructure and then school safety. And then we were also looking at building a new Merrill school and coming up with an elementary school solution for Webster Stanley Elementary and middle school. Heard the community loud and clear where they said, well, don't have enough information just yet related to the Merrill and Webster solutions, so we want to have more information on that. And so as recent as last night, the school board met and they were talking about specifically about an April 2020 referendum that we're looking to potentially be proceeding with. The school board is going to meet again, a special board meeting this coming Thursday at 6 o'clock at the district office in the boardroom in order to make an official decision and for a recommendation as to whether or not we're going to go forward with a referendum. Well, that referendum specifically, what it is talking about is infrastructure, and so infrastructure would be like electrical upgrades to north and west, as well as the Alberta Kimball Auditorium, Carl Traeger boilers and piping, fire alarm systems, generator replacements, the Alberta Kimball rigging, and for security. After our most recent incident here last month, we are going back revisiting, really taking a look at where are some of the things that we really need to address. Originally in the survey, we had said, we're talking about office relocation and entry remodel, but we also now recognize two other areas, which were security camera replacements and building communication modernization. So the total cost of that, what we're proposing would be $24,515,000, being the tax impact being at $19 per 100,000 home valuation per year. And again, just to kind of put that in perspective, we're talking about basically that is going to be 19 cents per millage versus what we paid this year for private school vouchers, which was 45 cents per millage. So just to kind of put it in perspective for you as to what we're talking about related to that. So those are just some of the things that coming your way. We're encouraging the public to please engage with us. We want to hear from you. We want you to be informed. We want to be transparent. We're in process of creating a long-term facilities plan. We're looking at a 10-year facility plan. We didn't get here overnight with our facilities. We're not going to get out of here overnight with our facilities, but we do want to lay it all out in front of you now so you know what the plan is and what the end game is for the districts. So please engage with us. We're posting information on our Facebook site. We're posting information on our school website. Please, all I'm asking is if you have questions, reach out to us. We want to communicate with you, and we want to be transparent. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Cartwright. And next we have Chancellor Andrew Levitt.
Well, good evening. You'll have to forgive my voice. I've been visiting grandchildren recently, and this is what happens when you visit grandchildren. Great year at UWO this last year. This last fall, we had over 15,000 students enrolled on 3 campuses and with our cooperative academic partnership program. So that way, I think we've had a very large impact. We've had almost 2,500 graduates graduating from associates, baccalaureate, master's, and doctorate in this past year. As a matter of fact, last December, we had 900 students graduate at COLF. 85 to 90% of these students remain in Wisconsin, right here mostly, after graduating. So we really are driving talent in this part of the state for sure. One of the things I'm very, very proud of is that because of a unique program that we have, we've actually almost doubled the number of out-of-state students on the campus from about 600 when I arrived to about 1,000 today, a little over 1,000. And 37% of those students remain after graduating. So this is really driving talent from other states into this valley. One of the reasons why I think the students are so sticky, quite frankly, is because of our business community here. 3 of our 4 academic colleges require an internship in order to graduate. And as a result, many of those students will have a job at the time that they graduate. And so we have a job placement rate of about 91%. After 9 months, about 91% of our graduates are doing exactly what it is that they want to be doing. So it's really a good time in terms of the student success. The challenges we have are, I will describe them in sort of the 3 ways, the 3 greats. There's the great decline, the great unknowing, and the great unbundling. And what the great decline is and this has already been alluded to tonight, is the change in demographics. That we simply have fewer young people in the state today than we did 5 years ago. And of those who are graduating from high school, fewer of those individuals are choosing to go to any kind of college, whether it's 2-year tech or 4-year college. And so that's obviously putting a lot of pressure on us at UW Oshkosh in terms of enrollment. If you look at the curve, we're going to be okay. We're in slight decline until about 2026, the year 2026, and then it's going to really begin to go down. And so if you remembering that it takes 19 years to make an 18-year-old, if you look at 2026 and take 18 off of that, you get 2008. and it was really the Great Recession in a lot of ways has flattened the population curve. And this is nationwide. It's hit the upper Northeast first. It's hitting the Midwest. It will eventually hit the South, which I would have never imagined simply because the South always seems to be growing. The great unknowing is that there's no longer a moving target of what we should be doing. There is no target. It used to be said that we should be educating people for the jobs that have not yet been invented. But what is also true is that today we are also educating people for jobs that will no longer exist in the next 10, 15, 20 years because of the disruptive presence of technology. Artificial intelligence, other things like that are really going to change how people work in the future. And this to me is the greatest argument yet as to why a sound liberal education is the best way forward for anybody who's graduating with a four-year degree, in that you learn flexibility, adaptability, problem solving, critical thinking, all those skills which are going to be transferable to almost any situation that you can imagine. So it's important for us to work closely with the region to determine what will be needed in terms of the workforce. With a four-year university like ours, we can't quite turn as fast as, say, our friends at the tech colleges who can really spin up programs very quickly. And so we have to look down the road a little bit further in order to find those programs. And then finally, there's the great unbundling. And this has to do with credentialing. That what are people expecting? What do employers expect of credentialing? And that's going to be changing rapidly, in my opinion, in higher education, particularly at the four-year level. So if it used to be that when you walked in the door, this is what you knew and this is what your credential was in college. As you go through 4 years, what you know grows. But the day that you graduate, the day before you graduate, I should say, this is your credentialing level. And then after you graduate, this now becomes your credentialing level. And so the question is, how can we have credentialing more closely tracked with what it is that you're learning, as opposed to making it so, well, my term from science, quantized, going from this level to this level, and anything in between doesn't count. So this is something I think we have to address really nationwide in order to do this. So these are the three challenges we have. The way forward for us is that we're going to start on a rigorous academic planning process. It is time really for the institution to take a very, very close look at the degree programs that we're offering. We need to look at those which are clearly under-enrolled. We need to look to see if, in fact, tweaks can be made, if they can continue to serve in the best interest of the individual who are earning that, as well as the region and the state and the nation. And then we also need to look at some that we can add. This isn't necessarily about program elimination, but it's more about program adaptation. And again, I think liberal arts are going to end up leading the way. There are about a little over 800,000 Wisconsinites walking around right now with some college. And I really think this is the great market moving forward, is how can we help those individuals obtain a credential that they can use to better their own lives and to move on in many respects. Almost 400,000 of those individuals have or are trying to seek some kind of credentialing. And quite frankly, the UW is playing a very small part in that. And on the order of about 8 to 10% of those individuals are coming through the UW. That is the market for us, that we have to get better at interacting with people who cannot attend a class at 10 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but in fact need to take that class more online, need to take that class in the evening, need to take that class in the weekends, need credit for prior learning, all of those things. That's not to suggest that we're not in those games. We definitely are. We have a great flexibility in the way we do things. We just simply need more of it. So with that, what I want to do is just remind everybody that it is in fact the year 2020. And in 2021, we will have the 150th anniversary of the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, which was the Oshkosh Normal School back in 1871 when it began. You will start to see a number of activities on our campus that will begin in January of 21, about a year from now. It's culminating on the 12th of September in 2021, where we want to hold a community picnic at the university to invite the town to come to campus to help us celebrate the 150th anniversary of the first day of classes on that campus. So with that, I will cede back the balance of my time, and I appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Mark Harris, I think that means you get an extra 15 seconds.
I'll use it.
And now Mark Harris, our county executive.
Well, this is the third year I'm talking a little bit about the county's airport, Whitman Regional Airport. And in the prior years, I talked about the need for a taxiway. But this time I can tell you that the projects have actually been funded. So there's 3 big projects that are going to go on at the airport. They should occur this year. One is that the general aviation terminal is going to be built. Currently, the airport has this large terminal designed for commercial traffic, about 40,000 square feet to heat and cool and maintain a roof on. And it's for a purpose that no longer exists at the airport. The airport now serves general aviation and promotes business, but it does not serve as a venue for the general public to travel. So that building is going to be replaced rather than repaired with a 12,500 square foot single-story administrative terminal building for the general aviation. And that's, private jets for business, the tech schools, flight training programs, a number of uses, many of which involve employment in the county. The cost of that project is about $7.4 million, with about $6.6 million of that being borne by the county. The rest is borne by the Bureau of Aeronautics. We're also going to extend a taxiway into the business park. This is something we talked about a number of times, but we have an 80-acre business park. And the advantage that park has is that when it's completed, the lots on one side of the park will have direct access to runways at the airport. So they get a first-class airport with excellent runways, an incredible tower, and it's good for business. And business loves to locate at an airport where they don't have to compete with takeoff and landing times with commercial traffic. So it should be a real attraction. It will take a long time to get it filled. We're just going to build a small nub of the taxiway so that we can get our first tenant in. And that'll only cost about $540,000, but all of that will initially be borne by the county. And when we land our first tenant that needs a taxiway, then the state will reimburse us somewhere between an 80% and a 95% level. And then we can complete the rest of the taxiway serving that business park. We also have the primary taxiway, Taxiway Alpha, that doesn't have anything to do with the business park, but it's a main taxiway there. It's aging, and it needs to be rebuilt. So that's a major project, $8.5 million, but $8.36 million of that is actually going to be paid by the FAA and the Bureau of Aeronautics. And if you're wondering where that money comes from, whenever you travel commercially, you pay a small tax. There's also some taxes on fuel for other types of flight that fund a pool of money that can then be drawn on for airport improvements. The next topic I want to talk about, and I'm going to try and keep it simple. I'm not sure I'm capable of that, but are property tax limitations. There is something interesting that I just saw yesterday, and that's that 94% of local government revenues come from property taxes. The state, on the other hand, draws primarily on income tax and sales tax. And there's been some trends. It's good for you when you're paying your tax bills, but bad for your communities when you're trying to accomplish things with local government. And that's that when they want to compare one state to another, they have to convert all the taxes to percentage shares of income. So they might say, for instance, that state and local taxes combined are 10.3% of income. And that way they can compare one state to another. But of course, the local taxes are paid based on property, not on income, but they can express them as a percentage of income. Well, I told you all that to let you know that local government and school district taxes are down to 3.5% of income. And that's the lowest percentage of income in 50 years, the lowest. And so that's been an ongoing trend that reduces tax bills but starves all of the entities that are represented up here. And the county, for instance, the limitation on what we can charge for our property taxes is that we can only charge the amount we had from the prior year plus or minus net new construction. So basically, if the tax base grows 1% from new houses being built, let's say, but all the houses in the county have also appreciated in value by 4%, we're only allowed to get the 1% increase. And what that effectively means, if all the properties appreciated evenly in the county, then existing properties would see no increase in their property taxes. They would just stay flat for a very prolonged period of time, maybe forever. It's a little more complicated than that because properties appreciate at different speeds. Some communities see small increases. Many of you probably live in Oshkosh. If you look at your tax bill, your county taxes actually declined and have been declining for several years. And that's the maximum that I can take. So it means that I have to work with a very little bit of money. So next I want to call up a scenario. You know, imagine you have a strip center and there's a butcher in one of the shops and there's a baker right next door. And if the butcher noticed that groceries were getting expensive to buy for some of his customers, and he wanted to give them a break, so he would declare that the prices would be dropped at the baker next door. That's kind of what local governments are experiencing. Leadership in both the Assembly and the Senate have already indicated they're going to come out with another bill further limiting property taxes. Now, remember, I told you the state doesn't get its revenue from property taxes. Local governments do, but it's the state deciding that taxes are too high, so they'll save you money by cutting property taxes, which they don't receive. And even if they backfill that, and there's an example of that. When I was on the tech school board a few years ago, the state took a portion of their levy off the tax levy and then funded it directly with general purpose revenues from the state. And you'd say, well, you know, they put in the money to offset it. All is well, isn't it? But they didn't have any mechanism in the money that they provided for it to go up. Prior to that, those amounts were allowed to increase by the amount of net new construction. But once it was funded out of general purpose revenue, it's fixed until the legislature decides to act to increase it or decrease it. And I think all of us up here have experienced the same thing, but where the state's decreased it. For instance, the amount of shared revenue the county receives is down 25%, about $750,000, from where it was when I started as county executive. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the state legislature and new rules pose some risks and threats to local government. And I think all of us have struggled with that. And in my mind, the state dealing with property taxes when they don't receive them is a little like the butcher cutting the prices of the baker next door. So the last one I want to mention very, very briefly is that counties are starting to get involved in helping organizations extend high-speed internet and broadband services. The Public Service Commission has had a number of grants, and the applicants for those grants have to get letters of support from the counties. Probably on an experimental basis, we're looking to partner with some businesses to extend either optical fiber beyond its current reach, or to use the public safety towers as platforms to provide Wi-Fi. It'll be a very slow process, but it really hampers business development in parts of the county where they have no access to Wi-Fi or to high-speed internet. For instance, dairy farms have to file their payroll taxes. They have to file those forms online. Many of them can't do that from their farm. They have to drive to some location where they can rent Wi-Fi and then submit their payroll records. So it would help business all over the county if we could extend Wi-Fi further. And I think my time's probably about up. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, now, so we have time for questions, and I have a few questions, but if anyone else has questions, Kobe does have cards and pencils. If you have a question that I failed to pick up, please hold it up, and Kobe will pick that up. So Mark ROHLOFF, we're going to start with you. You've got a couple here, but we'll give everyone a turn. So one of the questions was, can you comment on the new, you can start coming up here.
I have time to think about it.
Yeah, give you some time. Can you comment on the new development on the corner of Jackson and Pearl and some of the businesses that will inhabit that facility?
Yes, I can comment. Oh, you want depth to that answer? Is that what you want? Okay, that's what you come for. This Jackson and Pearl, if you're referring to the northwest corner, that is part of the merged development group out of Iowa that is going to be putting in some combination mixed use, retail on the bottom and some multifamily residential on top. The Oshkosh Food Co-op was pleased to announce back in November, I believe. It was a cold day, I just remember that. That at the northwest corner of Jackson and Pearl, we're looking at the development of the Food Co-op's building in cooperation with Merge Development. So they'll be on the bottom floor, and on the upper floors there'll be some multifamily and perhaps some offices. So we're excited that the Food Co-op is proceeding because, as many of you know, downtown Oshkosh is considered what's called a food desert, which means there's not a full service type of grocery or food available for the general public within a reasonable distance. And since the closest grocery store we have on the north side is actually Pick and Save up at Jackson and Murdoch, that's a legitimate concern. So we're very pleased to have the Food Co-op locate there. Does that cover whoever asked that question?
Okay, stay here.
Oh, I know, I'm not going anywhere.
Rather than have him sit down and get back up and sit down and we're just going to ask Mark a couple of questions and we'll pass it on. Okay, these two relate to streets. The first question is, will the city review funding mechanisms for streets in 2020?
I assume what that means has to do with special assessments. And if that's correct, I hope I'm answering the right question here. Because the funding mechanism for streets, a good portion of our streets are funded with special assessments. And those are charges that are to the adjoining property owners. And the council's been wrestling this for a number of years. I think the first time they actually asked me to look at this was back in 2013. And at the same time, there were discussions about, well, should we enact a wheel tax or a vehicle registration fee similar to some other communities? And the vehicle registration fee has picked up some interest, and council was on the verge of considering that for an option, but they took a look at it, and there are so many exemptions for vehicle registration fees that local governments can enact. For example, any vehicle over 8,000 pounds would be exempt. So the very vehicles that cause the most damage to streets would be exempt from that. So that was a legitimate fairness issue. Back in July, the council considered and rejected a proposal to enact a street transportation fee similar to what the city of Neenah has enacted. That's a relatively new and it's a relatively controversial issue. That was not well received, particularly by the business community, but there were other people that were also concerned about it. Council has formed a task force I see a couple of our members in the audience here, a citizens task force to address what options might be there. And they're still wrestling with that. They were actually due with an answer to council back in December, and they did not meet that deadline. They reported to council that they felt they still needed to do more work on studying this. Certainly that fee issue is still there, but they recognize that the way it was proposed or the details of it were not acceptable to the council, and it was not acceptable to other people as well, and looking for a fairer way to do that. So they're still struggling with that issue. I hope that answers it. I think it probably had to do with special assessments. And if it doesn't, give Kobe another copy, another question. I'm happy to answer the rest of it later.
Okay, and the last one that's relating to streets is why can't more street lines be painted, as some are completely disappearing? On dark nights or on rainy nights, it's difficult to tell which lane you're in.
On dark nights, it is difficult, even when they are painted. That is part of our street budget. We do have a budget for street painting. Generally, we get the main streets, and then every summer we have students that come in and operate our paint machines to help with get the rest of the residential streets done. But our residential streets are low volume traffic areas. We don't do a lot of painting on those streets at all. But the higher profile areas, I think West Haven was repainted this summer because we enacted some bike lanes, and so that kind of shifted things off of center, and so you can still see the old ones. I expected that to be more about when are you getting rid of the old ones, because it's a difficult process to get rid of them. But painting them, we have a budget, and we follow that within our resources and everything. And if you've got a street in particular, I won't promise that we'll be painting it in January, February, or March, but if you've got a street in particular, I'm happy to look at it.
Thank you, Mark. We might call you back up later, but, okay. The next one I'm going to have for Vicki, the next two, actually. So, Vicki, the first question is what will individual taxpayers pay after the referendum passes?
So what we have right now for this first off, the board has to make a decision whether or not we are going forward for a referendum yet officially. So I want to make sure I'm very clear on that. That decision will be made on next Thursday next Thursday at 6 o'clock. They're going to be meeting in a special board meeting to talk about that. For what we were looking at, for what we proposed, the tax impact would be $19 per 100,000 home valuation per year. And most of those referendums are usually for about 20 years. So it would be a tax impact of, again, $19 per $100,000 valuation per year.
The next one is, why do Oshkosh Area School District parents choose private schools? Parents/children choose private schools?
To be quite honest with you, there's a couple things it's kind of a mystery to us. We do not know who these students are. The state does not provide that information to us related to who are the students who attend the private schools on the private school vouchers. So we do not even have the ability to verify that they are residents of the Oshkosh Area School District themselves. The second thing on that is also what we're finding is based off our enrollment numbers and those type of things, we are of the opinion that a large number of these students have already been attending private schools, but now the parents are just taking advantage of the vouchers. So it's not necessarily that they're leaving the school district in order to go attend private schools.
A few more for Vicki. With Governor Evers' line item veto, he was able to increase public school funding. How much of an increase did the Oshkosh Area School District receive?
Certainly. So of the Oshkosh Area School District, how much additional revenue did we receive? So we had the revenue limit increase of $175 per student, so that equates to approximately $1.7 million. We also had the low spending provision of $125 per pupil, so that equates to about $1.2 million. And then we had a per pupil aid increase of $881,000 approximately. So the total amount of that was $3.8 million approximately. And you're probably wondering at the same time, well, then you had an increase of $3.8 million. How did you use that? No, and again, I'm going to go back to this, $3.8 million, but we, again, were of that, 2.46 is going to private school vouchers. But you're probably still going, okay, so with those additional funds, though, the 3.8, how are you using that? So what we did is we used them in order to provide all of our staff with the consumer price index increase of what that rate was for this past year. So we were able to provide that to our employees along with the corresponding benefits that go with that. We also added staffing, especially in the area of mental health. Specifically, we added 3 behavior curriculum intervention specialists in order to work in our neediest schools based off data. We also added on 2 second chance homebound positions, and again, working with students who have a lot of needs. And then we also, for additional staffing, was like, for example, we added a social worker to our 4K program in order to start younger with our families and getting them involved. So that was how we actually used the money, and that's how much money that we actually was given to us as well. And I think if I can expand just a point further, just because I think this is important to note as well. A lot of people are saying, well, the Governor Evers' budget was really great, and I do not want to say anything negative about it. We are extremely happy and grateful for the budget that we were given. But if you were to do a comparison and look at the comparison over time and account for inflation over a period of time, even with Governor Evers' budget that he had for education, it's still lower than the last year that Governor Doyle was in office, and the amount of money that he gave to the school districts is about a 1% lower. And then when you add in the private school voucher program, it's actually more than that. Thank you.
Oh, one more. Could you speak about, could you give us an update on the student busing initiative that's been an issue for our residents?
This is ongoing conversations at this point in time. I know that our board is committed to continuing the conversation, so it's something actually between Mark and I. We are having ongoing conversations in order to try to work on coming up with a solution for our students.
Okay, Chancellor Leavitt. Can you talk about the layoffs that occurred recently? Was it due to declining enrollment? And if enrollment is experiencing a slight decline now, and it resulted in 300 layoffs, what will UWO look like in 2026 when you mentioned that that will be a critical year?
Okay. I'm surprised to learn that there are layoffs. I haven't laid off a single individual in 5 years. I think what they may be referring to is the reduction that we have through a voluntary retirement options program that we're offering. There's over 300 people on the campus who are eligible for that, and so we would need to have 70 or 80 of those individuals to accept that program in order to reduce the number of FTE employees sufficiently to match a contraction in enrollment we've had because of we've talked about demographics and the hot economy and other things like that. When I walked in, this is before we added the access campuses, so just the Oshkosh campus, we were at about 1,408 FTE employees. Today we're in the mid-1200s. So the institution has gotten quite a bit smaller in this time period. Primarily it's driven again by enrollment.
One last one for you. How realistic is it to expect that people come back to college in the midst of career and adult life?
I think it's quite realistic, and I think the conditions have to be right. in order for that to happen. But people do that every day. It's amazing. People are able to finish some kind of credential, whether it's 2-year or 4-year, and they tend to do it one class at a time. And it's something I think that if we could put some real thought into and put some resources into, that hopefully we can get people to be able to complete faster than that. But you know, all of the studies have shown that those who have a baccalaureate degree will earn considerably more over their life than somebody who has just a high school diploma. So there's something I think is going to be in everybody's best interest to have. So.
Okay, Mark Harris, if you would start making your way up. Could you give us an update on the strategies the county has engaged in regarding incarceration process efficiencies that resulted in thinking out of the box related to jail expansion?
Yeah, this is a tough one. There is some creative thinking on reducing the jail population by having a program, instead of putting people in jail after they've been arrested for committing a crime, that they would be connected with social services that may relate to the underlying offenses. But I have to tell you, there's some confusion here. The program has not yet started, but there's already been a very significant reduction in the jail population. And it's a little bit of a mystery how this is working out. But we have moved the coroner out of the basement of Orrin King into the county administrative building to free up space, and that's where the program will be. We're in the process of hiring human service workers to help run the program, but there's a whole lot more that needs to be done before the program will actually be up and running. And at this time, we're hoping to engage other social service agencies into providing the services. And this is something that La Crosse County is already doing. But La Crosse County puts about $1 million of levy into their program. And as I talked about earlier, we're very, very limited on our ability to increase levy. So to put $1 million into the program, we'd have to take $1 million out of some other program. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks. Okay, now this one is for anyone. A recent city report shows that 44% of those who rent housing in Oshkosh are housing burdened. This means that they spend more than 30% or more of their income on housing, leaving insufficient income for other basic needs. While this is a nationwide crisis, our numbers are high. Lack of affordable housing is an urgent, wicked, and complicated problem that would take a substantial collaborative effort to solve. Do any of you see lack of affordable housing as an issue that could be addressed in a timely and meaningful way? Who wants to take that one?
Oh, I think any of these four would be happy to answer that question for you. It is a very complicated issue. There's kind of I struggle with this issue because certainly those facts are correct. And in Sue's prior life, and I was on her board of directors for United Way, we've been talking about this for a long time, Sue. So this is not something that's going to get resolved, that next year we'll be able to report back that this has been resolved. The struggle I have is that there are a lot of statistics these days, and unfortunately Jason White just left a couple minutes ago with Greater Oshkosh Economic Development, and Jason does a great job of promoting we're a great place for millennials. And one of the criteria in many of these national rankings, we're number 2 and number 5 and number 1. There's some really great rankings. And part of the reason those rankings exist is one of the criteria is affordable housing. I talked to some of the developers in town, and they're reluctant to work on programs that encourage affordable housing, not because they don't want to do it, but because the market rents that they charge are lower than the thresholds for the affordable housing credits they get, but then they can rent them to everybody. If they when you have those affordable housing incentives, then you're required to loan it to somebody of a lower income. But the rents themselves are so low that anybody can take them. So it kind of a struggle. Long answer, because it doesn't deny the fact that there are people who, 30% of their income, if it's more than 30% of their income, it's not affordable. That's pretty much the standard that exists. I don't want to say this is the only answer, but certainly part of the answer lies in, because our numbers aren't necessarily low compared, our costs of housing are much, much lower than most areas of the country. But our wages are an issue. So I guess part of me thinks that, and this is an economic development person inside of me, that says we need to work on getting breadwinner jobs for our community, not just, it's all great, we all love Chick-fil-A and all these great things, but we all know that those aren't the jobs that are going to be paying the breadwinner wages that we all need. We certainly need to look at that as an issue. So attracting and encouraging businesses to expand that can offer higher wage paying jobs, encouraging entrepreneurship at the university and the technical college. They both have programs directed towards entrepreneurs to raise the wages. And then the other issues, and we struggled with this on the United Way board, was that there are so many other factors. What are the obstacles to getting a higher education? And it has to do with, one of the factors has to do with daycare. I mean, and that's that the university doesn't have in their list of many things. Even though they've got a daycare center over there at the university, they can't handle the daycare needs of all of their students. But that's a legitimate issue. So it is very complicated. But the short answer is, I think there's a role that we play in economic development to get jobs that will allow you to be able to afford relatively affordable housing in the city of Oshkosh. And if it's $700 a month, say, for rent, you roughly need about $2,100 a month in income to make that happen. That's roughly $25,000 a year. But we know that if you've got a job that pays $10 at a fast food restaurant, you're not going to hit that. So how do you work those out? And certainly you have two incomes. Well, that's great. If you have two people that make $20,000, you're at $40,000, but most of that extra money is going to get eaten up in daycare and things like that. So it is a very complicated issue, but I think our role is really to work to identify jobs that can help raise that wage that people can afford, the housing that I think is relatively affordable in the city. And I'm happy to do a follow-up question with this. It's a complicated issue.
Okay, Mark, just come back up here for a second. Not the same question, though. Did anyone, before I ask Mark this, did anyone else have an answer to the question on affordable housing?
They don't want to touch it.
Okay, we'll roll off.
I just want to add real quick, there is a housing authority, both a city and a county housing authority. They are not part of either city or county government. They're an independent agency funded by HUD. And there are housing vouchers that can help someone pay rent. They do have subsidized rental units, but the availability of both the vouchers and the units is way below the demand. My understanding is they have a huge waiting list for those services, and that needs to be addressed somehow.
Thanks, Mark. Mark Roloff. How does the arena's financial difficulties affect the city? You were waiting for that one.
Yeah, well, fortunately, the answer is that we've constructed the agreement that we had with the owners of the arena so that it's what's called a pay-as-you-go tax increment incentive program. Number one, they have to pay their taxes in order to be eligible for that. That's not the only threshold. There are many others. Having liens on your property is a problem. We negotiated a settlement to give them their tax increment payment this year because, this year back in November, because they hadn't paid their taxes on time. Under normal circumstances, that would have rendered them ineligible. When they filed for bankruptcy, they knew that cash flow from the tax increment incentive was going to be crucial to them. They were able to demonstrate that to the judge, and so we negotiated a settlement to get that payment made this year. The taxes are not due for 2019. The taxes, some of you may have already paid, they're really not due until the first installment is at the end of January. So we won't know if they've made that threshold payment or not until after January 31st. They only have to pay about a quarter of it. I'm not sure how much they will pay. That'll certainly dictate a lot of what goes forward next year. They ultimately paid their taxes last year because one of the leverages that we have as a city is that if you are delinquent on your taxes, you will not get a liquor license. And having a liquor license for an arena is a very important thing. Ultimately, that was the leverage that we held because they were prepared to have an arena without a liquor license, and you may as well just lock the door. So that was ultimately the leverage we had. And we'll continue to keep doing that. It is privately owned. It is all of the public improvements that were done to benefit the arena were paid by the arena to us. They paid those in full. And part of the TIF incentive was to reimburse them for those costs that they incurred through the tax dollars they pay. So we've been made whole on those public improvements. So I think it's important that you understand that, because the way things are structured now with most of our tax increment districts is that they're all pay as you go. So the developer fronts the money and then we reimburse them over time through the tax increment. So they got to pay their taxes first. And they have to fulfill all their other obligations in order to continue. But we're made whole, so I guess that's a long way of saying that we're covered for now.
Oh, don't sit down.
You guys can all go home.
We're coming back to you. Earlier you mentioned the city was in debt. What is the value of the city's debt, and what are you doing to manage that debt?
Sure. Our debt, total general obligation debt, and I don't have this number memorized, but I'm giving you a ballpark number, is about $125 million. 10 years ago, 11 years ago when I arrived at the city, it was probably about $155 million. So we've been able to reduce our overall debt by about $30 million. At the same time, we were able to pay off or borrow to get an unfunded liability for prior pension liability that existed from the 1950s that we were on a loan that we were never repaying. We paid that off, and now we're paying it over through debt. But we fulfilled that liability that was just growing every year. So we've done a lot to get our debt down. What we're doing to manage the debt is we adopted a debt management policy. There's a maximum amount of debt that any city can incur. We cannot exceed 5% of our equalized value. And when I got here, we were probably at about 4% of our equalized value. Or another way of putting it, that 4 divided by 5, we were at 80%. We were nearly at 80% of our cap. That's dangerously high. We've been successful in getting that down to about 60% of our cap. So we've made good progress on that, and I'm very pleased with that. That's what happens when you reduce your debt by $30 million. Our goal ultimately is to get to about 50%, and the council's adopted a policy that our goal is to get to that 50% threshold by the year 2030. So basically that's our task for the decade. At the same time, we have to balance that out, as I brought up earlier. We have to balance that with we still have street needs. We still have public facility needs. We still have to address all those issues. Those aren't going to go away, and we can no longer bury our head in the sand. Mark Harris and I have a very common friend, a gentleman who passed away last month, Ken Roble, member of the county board. Ken retired from the City of Oshkosh as our street superintendent, worked over there. He retired in 1989, And one of the things he said when he retired in 1989, long before I was here, we really need to rebuild that city garage. It's in rough shape. We didn't do that until 2013. So it was nearly 25 years after Ken retired that his recommendation finally came through. We cannot afford to wait 25 years to get the next building, no different than Dr. Cartwright and the school board can wait 25 years to get the next school fixed. We have our community. It's not just the city, it's the schools, but you asked me about our debt. But we have facility needs that we have to address, and if we don't address them in the long term, we will pay in the long run. We will pay with higher utilities, we will pay with higher maintenance, we will pay with less efficiency of staff. I can tell you that every employee across the street at the Public Works Garage is out the door doing work 25 minutes earlier than they did before. So we're getting an extra 25 minutes of productivity out of our staff every single day. And there's probably about 40 people over there. So that's 40, do the math. We are saving a lot of money every day because of our investment in that building. It's not just that it looks nice, and I've heard the jokes about Garage Mahal and all that, but the reality is that's a fairly modest building for a community of our size, and I think incurring that debt is appropriate for our needs.
Stay here.
I know.
Okay. One more for Mark, and this one can probably be a short answer. Hint, hint. Is there a plan to deal with congestion on alternate routes when the Oshkosh Avenue Bridge closes?
Well, I could say yes and then be done and I meet your needs, but we do have a plan to, we always develop a detour route. But the reality is Oshkosh residents are very resilient and very resourceful. They find their way around. They know the ways to get there. There'll be a route that'll take you down Witzel over to Wisconsin and over to the university. But the reality is people know their way around. So I will trust the ingenuity of our residents to get there. But there'll be established routes, but ultimately our residents will figure it out.
So basically, no ferry.
No what?
No ferry.
No ferry. No.
Okay. Okay, so this is one, I thank you for all your questions, they've been wonderful. But I really like this one because it gives each of the presenters an opportunity to tell us something that they didn't have time to tell us in their 8 minutes. So because Debbie has been the quietest, I'm gonna let her go first. So Debbie, was there anything that you didn't have an opportunity to talk about in the 8 minutes that you had earlier? And the rest of you, while Debbie's coming up, can think about that. I feel like we cut you a little short, too. I mean, not we cut your time with, but you needed.
There was one thing
Okay.
that was on my list that I didn't mention, and it was some of the grant opportunities that the college has pursued. And some of these grants that we've pursued were in partnership with businesses to supply some services. So it was a business and industry type of contract. With Musa Metals, for example, right here in town, we did a lot of training with them for press brake operators and some training in there, and it was supported with a fast forward grant, so it really saved them a lot of money, and it was advantageous for us to partner with that business to do that work. So, and they got some employees out of it. Thank you.
Andy?
I guess I would say is we seem to be in the golden age of Titans when it comes to athletics. So we're very, very pleased by that. Obviously, we were the national champions in basketball, men's basketball last year. We're off to a bumpy start a little bit, but they're going to settle down. I think that we'll still make a good run for that. The women and women's basketball are doing phenomenally well. We have our track program, track and field, always produces national champions every single year. That's what we really are known as a track school in many, many ways. And then there's football. And so we have football coming back. They had a very good season. We beat Whitewater, which is the only game I really care about, to be perfectly honest. All the rest of it's just gravy. But we really are. It's a lot of fun. We're drawing bigger audiences. The basketball game last night against UW Platteville was very well attended. But at the same time, unfortunately, we lost. I know you were all there. But we did lose, but we'll get them next time. So with that, hail Titans.
Mark, I'm going to call you up next. Mark ROHLOFF. Was there anything else that you wanted to say? No. Okay. I guess not. Okay. Vicki.
I do need to make a clarification because I had a misstatement.
Okay.
When I was talking about how the increase in the property taxes went up 29 cents. I originally said 14 cents of that was due to the private school vouchers. I apologize. I was incorrect. It's actually 15 cents was actually due to the private school voucher of the 29 cents. So just wanted to clarify that very quickly, and I apologize. Curricular updates, boy, what do? We teach and we take care of our children. And so we had a major update this school year related to our phonics program. And we adopted a new phonics curriculum in the spring of 2019, trained teachers in the summer of 2019, and then implemented that new curriculum this fall for kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. We're very excited about the program because it's very engaging, it's hands-on, it's multisensory, and so that really hits the needs of many diverse learners, including learners who may have dyslexia or dysgraphia. So it really looks into explicit instruction, is research-based, sequence-based, supports item knowledge and application. So that's one curricular implementation that we did. We also added in, we're field testing at this point in time, a whole new social emotional learning strategy in elementary schools. And again, for the schools that we're piloting in this year, it's been very engaging and getting a lot of positive feedback from not only the teachers, but the students too, which is really important. And then lastly, we have a new social studies standards for kindergarten through 12th grade that we adopted that incorporates civic engagement and is allowing us to partner with Oshkosh Herald as well as the Children's Book Collaborative. Thank you.
And Mark Harris, we have just a few minutes, so you have to be brief, because at 7 o'clock, we're out of here.
Okay. Well, there is a program that's had a lot of success, but it's been over time. It's not been brand new. But several years ago, the Human Service Department added 7 social workers. And the goal was to reduce out-of-home placements, whether it was in, a JV prison or a Winnebago Mental Health or other state institutions, to see if we couldn't keep families intact by providing a high level of hands-on support from the Human Service Department. And we currently have no one in Lincoln Hills or in Copper Lake. And remember, that costs something like $600 a day for a placement there. We have very few people in Winnebago Mental Health. That's well over $1,000, maybe $1,200 a day. By keeping families intact and providing additional social services, it saves us a lot of money, and we've gotten much better outcomes with the young people that have been kept at home.
Thank you one more time to our panelists who are here today to answer your questions. I again want to thank you all for being here, and I also want to thank you for those of you that serve on boards, school boards or county boards, city advisory committees, or any of those kinds of things, to thank you for your service to that. And if you're interested, please get in touch with one of these people. And if you're interested in serving on a board, on a committee, go to their websites, see what's available, and get active in the community, because that's the only way we can become a stronger Oshkosh. So thank you again, and good night.